at the root of it for me, writing is about connection.
But it's also like this immediately equitable, easily created art form that
Absolutely.
everybody uses.
In case you didn't know, April is a very special month for all of us at the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers because it is officially National Poetry Month. No matter your creative outlet, we want to encourage you to celebrate poetry this month by learning about a new modern poet or sharing your favorite poem with a friend. We also want to encourage you to take a stab at poetry even if you've never tried it before. You can also support your fellow peers' work by reading poems in the 2024 National Student Poets Chapbook, which is available online, and we will link it in the show notes as well. Today, we're giving you all the inside scoop on the National Student Poets Program, which, yes, that includes portfolio tips on how your poetry can stand out. We chat about the life of a poet, both the glamorous and, the not so glamorous sides, of course, and the craft itself, how to grow in your poetry, and especially how to gather the courage to share your writing when poetry can be so, so vulnerable. First, we're chatting with a national student poet from the class of 2018, Darius Atefat-Peckham, who is the author of A Book of Kin, which won the 2023 Autumn House Poetry Prize. His work has appeared in many reputable publications such as the Georgia Review, the Journal, Poem a Day, and many more. Please enjoy this fascinating conversation with Darius. Hey, Darius, welcome to the Scholastic Awards podcast. So happy to have you here.
Hey, Avery, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Of course. So let's just jump right into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, what you write, and what you studied in college.
Yeah, so I'm a poet, and an aspiring creative nonfiction writer and
Cool.
fiction writer, actually. I want to do it all, hopefully one day.
I love that.
But yeah, I started out in poetry, mainly because my birth mother was a poet, my father's a poet, my stepmom is a poet.
There you go.
So it's a family business, a little bit. But I mostly started out because I was dealing with the grief over the loss of my mother and brother when I was 3 years old.
Mhm.
And poetry was a medium that I knew she worked in and that she used to connect with her loved ones who she'd lost. I had her book with me my entire childhood. So when I started to really reckon with my grief, I was thinking a lot about like this is a way to get to know her, get to connect with her. So that's kind of where it started for me.
Mhm.
Uh, and also with my living loved ones, when I couldn't feel it, when I didn't feel like I could express myself verbally, sometimes like getting to talk to my dad in that way. Like I remember sliding him poems underneath the shower door when he was like shot, and it's like probably not the best time to give someone a piece of paper. But
If it's poetry, it's okay. Any
yeah,
time is
right.
good for poetry. Yeah.
Probably like freaked him. He was like, ah. But no, like we were really, we were just a family that communicated that way. And it was lovely sometimes. It was like too much sometimes and overwhelming. Um, but my dad used to say like to his students, uh, you know, I'm an open book, like you can read it. And I think that that's really like a thing that we're generous with each other with our feelings, and
Yeah.
um, that's something I wanted to bring into all of these things. As I got older, I grew up in Huntington, West Virginia, so my writing and my artist life was kind of very solitary for a long time.
Mhm.
Um, until I went to boarding school, which I went to Interlochen Arts Academy in Michigan, which is a really special and unique place for artists as is Scholastic, and at a young age. And I think when I was 17, I went there and found a community of writers
Mhm.
for the first time, and that was really important to me. So then I went to college, where I went to Harvard, and I got to work with people and poets like Tracy K. Smith, Jory Graham, Josh Bell, and that was just a really complicated experience for me, but a really ended up like to be being a really good one for my art
Mhm.
in terms of mentorship, as did the National Student Poets Program in my senior year of high school, which really led me and sort of pointed me in the direction of Harvard. So
Okay, amazing. I'm so curious to know what was it like going to Harvard and being a poet? Was there a big poetry community there, or were you kind of a lone wolf in that sense? What was that like?
at first, you know, the thing about poetry is that it's really people say it's niche or in terms of the literary landscape, but I think it's also like really persistent, and it has like a kind of durability and endurance. And there are pockets everywhere. I think like if you're looking for it, you're gonna find it. Even in my hometown when I was growing up, there was a little like poetry writer community at the local library that I found when I was little,
Hmm.
that was run by this awesome person, Sarah Dooley. But I ended up doing finding my poetry community in Josh Bell's workshop, and then in this arts society called the Signet, which was really good for me. But at first, I was really scared. I met I love my suite mates, but they like the first words out of their mouth is like, "I'm computer science, I'm
Yep.
economics, I'm
Hmm.
applied mathematics," and I had six of them, or we were six of us, and I ended up like at first I was like, oh my gosh, this is not the right school for me. I need to transfer. Like I
Yeah.
need to go to Middlebury or something. Um, and then I ended up actually really loving the variety of experiences and also bringing my perspective to
Yeah.
my friends who were economics or like who were interested. I realized like all of these people are just brilliant. So they're
Hmm.
obviously interested in art history and interested in poetry and philosophy. And yeah, it ended up being a really beautiful thing once I opened myself to other poets.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, we talk so much on the podcast about how important it is to find fellow artists, but something to really think about is it's also so important to have people in your life who do other sorts of things and who are like diverse in what they do so that you can get inspired and have things to write about. So that's a really good point.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your National Student Poets Program experience. Can you talk to us a little bit about what that was like, any particularly memorable experiences, and just your experience of winning the award?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was it really felt, I think all of us felt this way in my year at least, where it was like the alliance was calling you and it was like, who is this alliance? And so secretive and mysterious.
Yeah.
But it also in that way felt like this thing, I think some people it's on their radar, like, oh, National Student Poets. Like one visited my school and one, and like they knew
Hmm.
about what the program was. For me, I really didn't. I didn't know something like that existed. And in the best way, it was sort of like you find out about like Hogwarts or you know what I mean, alternate universes or whatever. Like it's like, whoa, there is this thing that's going on that is exactly what I want to be doing. And I think in that sense, like when I mean like by exactly what I want to be doing is, at the root of it for me, writing is about connection. And so to me, like getting to travel and visit schools and talk to middle schoolers and high schoolers about poetry, about what's important to me about poetry, having the resources to be able to do that, getting the time, from like a reputable organization to be like, hey, he's leaving school this week, to go to like Salt Lake City to the National Association of Grief Counselors to talk to them about joy in literature and like like that just doesn't happen for high schoolers a lot, like especially when you're taking like 7 AP courses or whatever,
Hmm.
to try to get to a good college. And that life experience I think takes a back seat sometimes, with students who are really driven and motivated,
Hmm.
in high school. And I've talked to high schoolers who are like, um, that was the time in their life where they had the least amount of like life experience because they were just so into their
Right.
studies and trying so hard to do well. And it becomes so competitive. But anyway, getting to talk to these kids and be like, hey, poetry's an option, Scholastic's an option, this is, and they didn't realize that it was. And I think that um, that's why it was exciting for me to get that call to find that community, to get those resources. I mean, yeah, I don't know. And it was like it's also just such a cool experience in terms of like getting to go to the like meet all these writers who you've like I met Brian Selznick like on the first day that I was a national student poet,
Yeah.
and it because I grew up reading Hugo Cabret and all these,
Hmm, hmm.
like yeah, it was cool. Sometimes I
Yeah.
feel like I'm 17 again. I'm like, whoa, like really that. But
So that like perfectly leads into my next question because you're talking about being a mentor for these kids. What do
yeah.
you have to say for young poets out there who maybe they don't even consider themselves a poet yet? Maybe they're dabbling in poetry, but they don't have a lot of confidence. What would you say you do to like battle imposter syndrome? What kind of encouragement do you have for young poets?
Yeah, I mean, I really do believe that imposter syndrome is driven by um I mean, it's driven by ambition and lack of confidence in I do think though it's like a kind of projection from the people around you. There's like I
Mm,
think like a lot of the time we feel like imposter syndrome is just like this lack of confidence in ourselves, and then we get even more down on ourselves, like why do I feel this way, like why, but I do think that sometimes being in writing communities, as wonderful as it is, can foster a kind of imposter syndrome. So I think it's important, like once you find that writing community, it's so special, trying to also balance that with the love of writing that was solitary and that was for yourself.
mm,
For me, it took a long time to get back, like after Harvard specifically. And I did find things that I loved about Harvard, but one of the things I didn't love was this constant competition,
mhm.
and this need to prove yourself with what you're doing, like constantly, like every single conversation is like, here's what I'm doing and here's how it's
Yeah.
going to change the world, and it's like, okay, well, sometimes for the funny thing about that is like before I was thinking about poetry as a way of like um reaching out and connecting in community, I was thinking about doing it because it was something I needed and something I did to reach out to somebody who, I wasn't even sure would receive it,
Mhm.
my mom. And I think that um that's important to get to too, because there was also a sense of like, it sounds weird because I was writing about grief and I was writing about someone I had lost, but there was a sense of play to that. Like it was
Mm,
like a sense of whimsy, a sense of like um uh I don't know what this is going to do. So getting back to
yeah.
that like unknowing, like unknowing these things that like we've become more adults about, like trying to access. I think that's why mentoring kids was so important to me, because when I saw their excitement and I saw like um oh, poetry can be like this. Oh, poetry can include joy and play, and um like it renewed that sense of love and whimsy in me
Mm,
about writing.
absolutely. Hmm.
Just like playing with kids, like even you go bounce in a bouncy house for 20 minutes with
Yep.
like a bunch of 5-year-olds, and you're like, yeah, life is worth living, like, and
Absolutely.
bouncing around and all. And so I just think that interaction is really important. One of my favorite poets, Naomi Shihab Nye, talks about this
Hmm.
a lot, and actually builds some of her poems from just language that little kids say to her in like elementary schools. She was like youth poet laureate for a little while, and so I think, yeah, and she's amazing. And she also blurbed my book, which was a dream come true for me. So I guess like just this lineage of like giving back, is like it's just
Absolutely.
very, very circular and reciprocal to me.
Yeah, that's such an interesting point about how even when you're talking about or when you're writing about something as complicated and serious as grief, there's also like an element of play with language. I find that so interesting. Um,
Yeah.
what other themes do you like to explore in your writing? Is it primarily grief and loss, or what are your favorite things to kind of explore?
Well, I'd say like, so grief and loss with the understanding, like the way that Ross Gay thinks about it, which is like our shared, what if joy is shared sorrows? What if you know our joy is like our sorrows coming together and like talking to each other. So I think that's something I think about a lot, is like on the flip side of joy, or the flip side of grief is joy. You can't
Mhm.
feel it, either thing, without the other. Love too. So I write a lot of love poems. Even like the elegies, I think are love poems for me. And they take the same tonal texture and like take the same register I'm writing
Hmm.
from. Recently I've been writing, I think my first book like was much more mystical. In that sense, I'm really interested in Sufi poetry, like Rumi and Hafez and Attar, and I'm Persian, so
Hmm.
that's also important context. Um, but thinking about like Rumi's assertion that like um, you know, what what I can't tell you, love will tell you, these things like or this idea that like being in life and experiencing life is being in love like with everything and trying to. So I don't know. I think like for me, these are really broad topics
Yeah.
and themes, but I'm thinking a lot about the love poem, the ghazal, which is a traditional Persian and Arabic form that thinks a lot about like grief and love and the beloved as a figure that you're writing to and toward. Family is really important to me.
Hmm.
Every single poem I've ever written has a family member in it.
Hmm.
To the point where one of my mentors, Jory, was like, you don't have to have your dad and your Bibi in every single poem. And I was like, yeah, it makes me feel better, so they're gonna
Oh,
stay.
yeah.
Um, but what she was saying is like maybe that's helpful at the beginning, and then you can, think about their presence not like explicitly but implicit to the poem. So that's important too. I don't know. But for me, like one of the advice is like populate your poems with people that make you feel inspired to write them. That's something that like I that helps me, and if they don't belong there, they'll exit the poem eventually. But
Yeah.
I do think it's helpful. Um, yeah, and then what other topics? Masculinity, I write a lot about,
Mm.
and uh, and gender roles because I'm always thinking about that with
Hmm.
both my heritage heritages, Iranian and American, uh, and thinking about patriarchy and kings and presidents and these kinds of things. In my first book, more so, yeah. So,
So where do you find inspiration? Like, do you have a notes app in your phone or something where you're like
oh yeah.
writing ideas down? Like, how does it just come to you? And what's your writing process like?
Well, and I was talking about getting back to some of those base foundational like techniques that like I think we're not even aware of when we're younger, but that we do. So journaling is something that I'm getting back to now.
I love that. I'm a huge journaler. That's awesome.
Yeah, and it's like it's so funny because we don't think about things like this in writing because like journaling is always an option, but we can get away from it in a way that's like um almost paralyzing. Like I didn't journal once I started to be a writer. Like I don't think I journaled for like 8 years, and
Mm.
it was like, oh, before I was becoming a writer, like journaling was all I did. That was writing to me. So
Yes.
it's really important. I think it got me back to my voice a little bit, in terms of like uh, I could live with abandon in the pages of my journal, in terms without like thinking so much about like how it will be received and
Yes.
and I can
Oh
let
my
that stuff
God.
flow too.
I could do a whole episode on journaling, honestly, and how important it is to being a writer, no matter what type of writer or artist you are in general. I think it's so important to have a space that isn't a place where you're writing for other people. It's just for you, which is probably so helpful with poetry too, because poetry is particularly personal. How how do you deal with like how personal poetry is and like being so vulnerable. Is that something that's scary or hard for you, or have you always just kind of, has it always come naturally to you?
Yeah, I think it helps me to think about so my specific practice, like one of the reasons why a lot of my poems take the register of a love poem is because I'm always addressing them to people. So it helps me to think about one of my favorite things about writing generally is that when you read somebody else's work, you deepen your intimacy with them in a way that you wouldn't be able to if you were just talking or like in physical space with each other because Toy Derricott talks about it like is it, I think it's Toy who said this, but it's like a semblance of your soul, you know, in your writing. It's not you entire, it's like a semblance of that soul. So you're getting something that really like you're not, it's special. It's special to receive a poem from someone. And I think the same way about my writing is like I want to write as though I'm trying to tell someone I love something about myself that's really important, you know, and kind of urgent and kind of even if they never see it, you know,
Mhm.
and that feels really important to me in poetry. In and that really takes a bit of like vulnerability, because it's not even it's like an extra level of vulnerability. Like the journal stuff, like that's gonna sit with you and you can keep
Right.
that. But when you put it in a poem and you're addressing it to someone, you're being really generous, I think. So I'm drawn to writing that is generous, that has like a kind of generosity, warmth, like openness, open-heartedness.
Mhm.
And one thing your listeners are probably realizing about me and just generally is that I'm long-winded, I'm an oversharer, I'm an
Most
overthinker.
writers are, so that
Yeah.
makes sense. Yeah.
um, and I am an open book. I will tell, like if somebody asks me how I'm doing, like 20 minutes of like every single thing that has ever happened to me, probably.
That's real. Yeah.
um, and I think that that's just something that I practice. But I'm trying, like, one of the reasons why I'm going back to journaling is that I'm also trying to practice withholding, and trying to practice like self-care in terms of like holding on to certain things that um, I'm not ready to share yet.
Mhm.
So one of the things, I grew up around writers, so I was publishing really early. And I think Scholastic is a really nice opportunity to do that. I also would want to like just caution against um, like feeling like you have to necessarily, because you have that outlet, that you have to share everything immediately, you know.
Yeah.
That there are some things. I had a friend, sent a poem to a friend this summer that was really important to me, and they were like, hold on to this for a little while for yourself. And before they had ever said that to me, like I didn't even think it was really an option. I was like, I'm gonna send this out. It's a good poem, so therefore I'm gonna. And then I realized I didn't really need the affirmation yet for that poem, or like I didn't need the validation or the rejection, you know,
Yes.
whatever that would be. So yeah, I mean, I think there are poems or songs, you know, that you write or whatever, and they're just yours for a really long time, and then maybe when you're like 90, it comes out, you know.
Absolutely. No, that is such a good point because, like, I think that's the way to keep your love of writing alive in a sense, is if you make sure that you're writing things that are just for you and not, like you said, relying on that validation. That's such a good point. Um, so can you talk to us a little bit about what the publishing process has been like, and specifically for poetry, like what is revision like? What's that process?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I've been trying to reckon with this for myself because I'm 23. I have a book coming out. You know, it feels really young for me. I don't know. But I always felt like I think it's important for me right now because the book was written in a certain voice, like of a certain voice with like at a time, you know, there's like an energy there. I don't think like if I kept working on it, it would become
Yeah.
any better. I think it
Mhm.
would probably get worse.
Well, it's like
So
you're capturing that one moment in time, that
yeah,
age when you wrote it. So,
exactly. Yeah, and I think that that's why I do think like I feel bad when writers are like, "Oh, I published this when I was 17. Why did I do that?" I'm like, "No, this is like a time like it's like a time capsule. It's so cool that it's
yes.
out there and that because we don't really keep things as much anymore. Like it becomes a Word doc and then like you just it's like deleted somehow or it's gone. And I think like things aren't as physical. So getting to publish something like it does stay. Like it has some staying power now. So just like enjoy. I look back at poems that I published. I think I was like 15 or something, and I'm like, oh. But also, I'm like poor guy. But I'm also like that's cool that it exists. So it's just like getting there and feeling good about that. I'm trying to have the same opinion about my book, where I'm like I love that this, like, I can hold it.
Yeah.
Just recently I've been able to hold it, and that feels really good. I think like, so the publishing process, um, there is an anxiety about like, this feels permanent. This feels kind of final. About like, and it's a semblance of your soul. So it's
Yeah.
like, so is this the semblance that you want to share? Are there some things like, I think one thing I was thinking a lot about was like ethical concerns about representing community and family,
Mhm.
and being really careful and caring in the way that I do that. So that's something I think that, um, once you start publishing, once you start moving forward with that stuff, is really important to consider. Because even if a family member is upset with you about something that you wrote, if it's true, if you feel like you cared for them, there is something that you can stand on, where you can be like, well, I love you, and this is an example of that love and care. And even if you're angry, I hope we can move past that, and usually they will if they love you. So
Yeah.
I think that that's important. Yeah, but publishing process. So the book was accepted by Autumn House Press, and it won their poetry prize, which I was kind of geeking out about because Ada Limon won that poetry prize for her first book, and she's like one of my favorite poets ever. So I was pretty excited about that, and I was lucky because I think Autumn House is just a really, I've been lucky just generally. Like all of the writing spaces I've been in have been so warm and supportive and sweet to me, and Autumn House is no exception. So I really have enjoyed that. So I think finding a publisher. So thinking about like your work and the publishing, relationship as a relationship,
Mhm.
not just like I'm giving them my work, please take it, thank
Yeah.
you, and like thanking the like publishing gods or something. It's really like finding a home for your work that you feel like will care for it and
Hmm.
be um, be the right fit. And I think for this book, for my first book, this is like exactly where I want it to be, and that has made me feel so good just generally. Um, so really thinking about it as a relationship, as like a, if you get rejected, that probably wasn't the place that you wanted to be with anyway, because they didn't, they weren't caring for your work in the way that you would have. So I think that that's another part of it to think about. Yeah. So I don't know. Like working with
Yeah.
editors is fun,
Hmm.
especially if they're discerning and kind, because they'll want the best for your work, you know,
Hmm.
for you.
Do you feel like you grew as a writer through working with editors and developing your book?
Yeah, I do think so. I worked with my editor's name is Mike Good, who is amazing. I always say like you are good, like you really are,
Thank you.
like in his being, in his soul, like just a good person, and very hardworking. He ended up leaving Autumn House after my book. Like I would think I was his last project, maybe, or
Okay.
maybe like
Hmm.
them. And then now he's working at a different like nonprofit, I think. Mm, yeah, but he's wonderful. And yeah, so working with an editor is really exciting, because so, even with mentors, like there's a certain amount of like they have a stake in your personal development and growth. An editor, like, um sometimes I think they can be a little colder, just because, um, their main role is to like do well by their press, right?
Right.
And that's their job. So I think there's a certain amount of like remove, but if it's a really kind and warm editor, you're gonna find that like that remove is really helpful, in terms of like, oh, if I didn't know you, like this might be difficult to grasp for a
Yeah.
reader, or like, maybe make this a little bit more clear. Think about moving this poem over here, to
Hmm.
follow the like emotional arc of the book. Um, you know, Mike even was like, "Are there any poems that you want to include that you'd be sad to not have in the book?" And I included a poem called "The Scene Unseen," which is in my head maybe not the best poem I've ever written, but I was like thinking about, I was like, which poems, like I love this poem, so put it in the book.
Hmm.
I don't know if it made it better, but to me it did, and I think that that was really an act of care on his part, being like, what is there a poem that you want to have in here when you go to readings to like be able to read or something.
Hmm. Yeah, no,
And
I love that he did that. And also just to have that objective kind of point of view when you are, again, writing about such personal things. That can
Right.
be so helpful sometimes, just to be like, oh, exactly what you said. Um,
Well, also like the first poem in my book is called Wind Chimes,
uh-huh.
and I didn't realize that it was spelled like it was two separate words, like wind and chimes, So I had it like so just things like that, like having a discerning
Exactly. We
editor.
love editors. Editors are the best for that reason.
Welcome to Hot Seat. This is the segment where we ask our guests a speed round of questions about life, creativity, and everything in between.
Okay. Do you prefer to write with pen and paper or laptop computer?
Pen and paper.
Are you a morning writer or a night writer?
Morning, absolutely.
Nice.
I don't do anything past like 5 p.m.
Me too. Rhyming or free verse?
Free verse.
Who is a poet you would love to have coffee with?
Ooh, Ross Gay.
Love how fast that was.
No, I love him so much. Good. Ross, please, let's have coffee.
Well, we're putting it out there right now. Favorite place to write?
My desk and outside.
Can you describe yourself as a poet in 3 words or less?
I love you. Is that weird?
No, that's amazing. I love that. Spoken word poetry or written word poetry?
Both? I think both are great. Somewhere in between too is awesome. Like
What's your favorite season to write in?
fall?
Do you listen to music while writing? And if so, what?
Not usually. I do like listening to, if I'm going to, like listening to classical music is nice.
And our last question is, where can our audience find you? Do you have an Instagram, website, anywhere you can point people so that they can see your beautiful work?
Yeah, I have an Instagram, d.ap_ is my Instagram. I'm on Facebook as well, but I don't know if the younger audience will will know anything about that. And then online too, I have poems out there on Poetry Foundation, Poem a Day, things like that. So just look up my name. I'm gonna get a website, I think, eventually. I don't know when.
Okay, amazing. Well, we will have all that good information linked in the show notes. But Darius, thank you so much for coming on the show. This was so fascinating and inspiring, and learned so much from you. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Avery. No, it felt really energizing and inspiring for me too. So maybe I'll
Good,
go
I'm
write
so
a
glad.
poem.
Awesome.
Our next conversation is one you're absolutely going to want to listen to if you know absolutely nothing about the National Student Poets Program, or if you are so interested in being a National Student Poet next year. We're going to hear from Hannah Jones, who is the manager of the National Student Poets Program and who has been working here at the Alliance for the past 10 years.
I'm Hannah Jones, and I am the National Student Poets Program Manager, and I have been working on the program since 2014, so 10 years. And the program is a partnership between us, the Alliance for Young Artists and Writers, and the IMLS, the Institute for Museum and Library Services, which is our federal funding partner. And we basically, out of the poetry submissions to the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards in the 10th and 11th grade categories, we winnow it down to 45 semifinalists, who then submit more poetry and videos as well, additional materials so that sort of their whole comprehensive body of work can be reviewed. And then from that amount, we get down to 5. One representing each region of the country for a year of poetry, youth poetry ambassadorship. It's kind of like the elevator pitch of the program.
Perfectly said. And what is your exact role? Like, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? How do you run the program? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I communicate with the current poets, obviously check in whenever there is a request, either through IMLS channels in a museum or a library, for example, wants to work with a poet, or through us, like a school or some other extracurricular activity reaches out and wants to work with the poet. Basically, they go throughout their different regions over the course of the year. Sometimes they go as a larger group. when I organize a trip to a book festival, like the Louisiana Book Festival
Mhm.
they've gone to the past 3 years. Um, and then they do separate individual events based on their interests and what they want to do with their year of service. Whether it's go into after school programs, community centers, some work in old age homes, some worked with veterans, some work with
Mhm.
LGBTQ plus groups. So it really runs the gamut of like whatever it is that the individual poet is interested in doing, we give them the resources and the support,
Amazing.
and the money to do it.
And so what happens if there's a poet who maybe doesn't know what they want to do? Do you ever advise them on like ideas that they can have, anything like that? Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Like we're definitely sort of in that period right now of deciding, the poets are deciding, the class of 2024 are
Mhm.
deciding what it is they want to do with the work that they have. And it's always hard because it's very daunting. There's so many different things that you can pick and so much that you can do. But really the most successful like community service work that the National Student Poets do
Mhm.
really starts small.
Okay.
It starts with like something that's what I sort of always guide them to is to like just start with something very small and build
Mhm.
out from that. Like as
Okay.
opposed to thinking like I'm going to do this huge thing
Yes,
and then like not realizing how do I start doing that huge
absolutely.
thing.
So what's an example of something small?
Something small would be honestly working just with your own school if
Mhm.
there's not like a large writing program in your school. And I know that
Yeah.
a couple of the poets this year have that problem to
Uh-huh.
work with the school to identify some people who might actually be interested in expanding some type of extracurricular writing group after school.
Oh,
Or to sort of connect with a local library that may have a young adult reading program, and say like, hey, would you be interested in a poetry program added to this? Because poetry is kind of it exists in this weird limbo where it's at once this arcane and unreachable
yes.
art form that everybody hates, but it's also like this immediately equitable, easily created art form that
Absolutely.
everybody uses like, without realizing it.
And
So
runs our world with songwriting and
with
everything.
songwriting and you see it like really transform and take over people's imaginations when certain
Yeah.
poems like go viral, like the
So true.
Mary Oliver Good Bones poem, right? Like people cling to that because it speaks to something that really does connect you, especially
Absolutely.
like in times of extreme
Yes, so true.
sadness.
So, okay, this is your platform that we can say and we can address any frequently asked questions. So, this is your chance. What are the most frequently asked questions that you receive, and can you address sort of any of them?
Yeah, basically it's usually like how do I enter the program? And the number like it's basically you have to be in 10th or 11th grade
Mhm.
and submit poetry to the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards
Okay,
and
so they don't have
receive.
to like check off anything
There's
or
no checking off anything. It comes through like with the juror scores and everything like on our end, and that's how we identify the final sort of pool.
okay.
We look into that. And then you will receive a communication from me,
Mhm.
usually, requesting, saying you have been selected and requesting additional information. That's one, I
Awesome.
think that's the main, um, most frequently asked question. But another one I think is that most of the time semifinalists assume
Mhm.
that they have not won or they have not been selected because so much time has passed, a couple of months have passed.
Right.
But it takes a while, it takes a little, like, because we're working with multiple other partners, we're working with other jurors, we're conferring with the Institute of Museum and Library Services on selecting the class and working together. It does take a few months. So there are a lot of times where I think a lot of national student poets have assumed like, oh, I didn't get it because I didn't hear anything. It's been, a
Yes.
couple of months have gone by, so just forgotten about it. And then it's like, oh no, just wait, we're like sort of a little
Nice surprise.
microcosm of the publishing world. Like we take a little
That
while, and
that
then
is
it's like
so true. That is so we're just preparing these young writers for the
for
future of
the
publishing.
epic amounts of waiting that will exist in the future for that waiting to hear back.
Absolutely, that's hilarious. So a little bit of secret insider info. How can our teens do the best that they possibly can in their poetry portfolio or their portfolios in general? Especially for those teens who maybe like poetry is their thing and they want this more than anything. What do you recommend?
What do I recommend? Honestly, like I know that I and a lot of other um of the jurors, we're like they're always looking for that distinct voice. And it's like be like that's the number one thing is that like talk about the things that like you are passionate about, write about those. Don't try to be a different poet. That's not to say like I'm like always read lots of contemporary poetry and like read your peers' poetry to know what they're writing and what they're saying and be inspired by them, not to like copy them, but to be
Right.
inspired to be in that open dialogue. And like again, like it's really just about like having like what is your particular perspective. It's not about like knowing everything. And I say this like to the National Student Poets too, like when they're going to go talk about poetry, it's like you're not king of poetry, you're not queen of poetry, you're not nobody is master of poetry. It's like what is it that you love, what is it that drives you, what is it that makes you stop and be like I gotta write that down for later. Like
Absolutely. Yeah. And would you say like the more vulnerable a poet is, the more you connect with them? How do you feel
yeah,
about
certainly. Although it can, it's really it's hard, and that can be sort of the thing that you try to balance. Like, how much of myself am I comfortable opening up and laying bare, especially if I'm then given sort of a public platform
that?
to share my poetry with, And there are some student poets who are like, "Can I keep this one poem, like from my collection, private?"
And can you do that?
Of course.
Amazing.
Of
Okay, good.
course. Even sometimes there are two poems. It's like, can I keep these two poems private? And the answer is yes. Like,
Yeah,
it's about being able to share what each student poet is comfortable
perfect.
sharing, number one. But like, yeah, but like there's also, another question that does come up is like, oh, we're reading for like in these governmental settings, like, do we have to censor ourselves? And the answer there is also no. Like, do not censor yourself. Like, there will be times when IMLS might say like this is the poem that you're going to read because like this they like they'll be like this from your submission is the poem you'll read for this scenario. That will happen like once in their entire
Okay,
year of service. Every other time it's like what are you comfortable reading? What are you comfortable sharing? Like
absolutely.
what do you want to give away like in the reading setting and like
Yes,
what doors do you want to leave open like for other people to come in? Like
absolutely.
it's
Okay, that's great to
vulnerable.
know because I can imagine there could be some intimidation there with poets thinking like, oh, their work is so vulnerable and personal. Maybe they don't want to share it with everyone. So that is great to know.
Yeah,
Um,
there are definitely ways to keep like certain works private. Like we've
right.
also like worked with they're like, oh, if I could, can I like change like a name or a detail so that I become less identifiable in this? And it's like,
Yeah.
of course, absolutely, because it is also about the safety of
Yes.
everyone who wants to
So
share
true. So
their
true.
work.
So, is there a favorite or most special memory of a part of the program? I'm sure you have dozens, but if you could
Yeah, so
think of
many.
something
I
in
know, right?
particular. Yes.
Yeah, I will say the one that I always return to happened a long time ago, back in April of 2016, like a
Okay.
very, but I think about it to this day. So I feel
Mhm.
like it kind of encapsulates, like, to me, what the program is about, which is that, like, for April, a lot of the time, the poets will travel and do special events for Poetry Month
Right. Of
in celebration, to just sort of spread awareness about poetry and enjoy poetry in the month that's meant to celebrate it.
course.
Um, and in 2016, one of the poets, Chastity Hale, went to Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, and I was lucky enough to like sort of attend as a staff and go around with her to different schools, public schools in this area. And you get a very different mix of eagerness based on like some kids have been told like you have to attend this, whereas like some
Right.
kids have been told like some are like in a writing program and they're like, yes, we can't wait to like have this young poet talk to us, where or you're like you step into a large setting and there's like a group of like actively hostile teenagers who like deeply don't want to be there.
Hmm.
um so just getting to like watch Chastity handle those different scenarios was really amazing. But the main thing for me was like at the end of the first day, I think it was, we were in this library space where like not everyone was really like paying attention or connecting. Some people were really into it, but some weren't. But at the end of the workshop, this one younger boy like stayed behind to show her his poem, and it was like beautiful. Like
Aw.
it was a really, like, it was a beautiful, unexpected, and it was like, like an 11-year-old boy, right? Like who's like very much like this is not something I could share in the group setting because I would be clowned and like
Yes.
no one would let me hear the end of it. And she sat and talked with him for like 25 minutes about like what inspired him to do that poem and like and how he like really had like something special and he should keep at it. And like again, like for me, I'm like it like you can like do like an entire event, right? And see like 50, 60, 70, 100 kids, right? But it's like that one kid who like had that moment.
Wait, so this was 2016. Do we have an update? Do we know, is this kid
I
like,
don't know, but she was like, you have to, when you are old enough, like you have to submit this, like you have to
yeah,
keep going. I've always wondered, I've always wanted, because like I don't know if I have to, one day I'm gonna reach out to her and be like,
yeah, you have
did
to.
you get
That's
his
such a
name? Did
touching
we?
story. I
Yeah.
love that. I mean, that must be such a gratifying part of the entire program is seeing how these teens just rely on each other and connect. Like, does everybody in the program kind of become really good friends, or does it?
It's really, because like it's about their group dynamic, each class.
Yeah,
And then, we stay in communication with and try to stay engaged with the alums of the program too, even as that grows and grows with every passing year. But the classes themselves like really do form a bond that I can't understand, or like nobody who hasn't experienced it can
yeah.
understand, I feel like, but you can watch it happen. It's very magical.
Mhm.
Um, and that's one of the most important things I think about it as well, is that like a lot of the time creating, especially as a teenager, like it can be very isolating. A lot of like there are a
Absolutely.
lot of cases like there's a lot more opportunities now than there were when I was a teenager. Like I was like, I'll post to fanfiction.net, right? Like that's what I had, that's what
Yeah.
there was.
Yep.
Like,
Yep. Yep.
but
Yeah.
now there are like online journals and lots of places to like find other people, mentorship opportunities, that kind of thing. But it can still be like, if you don't have like the support of your school, or you don't know that like these various programs exist, or you don't even think, you're like, okay, that's for the people who do this seriously and not for me. Um, it can be a very alienating and lonely experience. And the goal is to create a community, like a community of support that they can rely on and like to help each other and learn from each other and grow from each other. Um, it's kind of, it's like people always are talking about it not being an award. It's a distinction, but it's also like, a call to action.
Right.
But it's also like the creation of
Yeah.
this like this group of peers who hopefully will be able to connect with each other and still chat with each other. Like a couple of years back, I did I don't even remember what year it was, but it might have been even 2022, but the class of 2016 like messaged on their old like group chat that I was a part of, and I was just like, oh my God, you still
That is so heartwarming. I love that. That's
like
amazing.
check in and see how I was just like, I think of you all too, Like,
Oh,
so I
that's
do
so
think that
special.
there like having that ability to sort of have this community, this creative community of people that you trust and can
Yeah.
rely on, to give you feedback, to challenge you.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I mean, having just writer friends in general, but writer friends who write what you write and can support you in that exact very niche field is essential. Like I think that it's so much easier to give up along the way if you don't have that support group and
I
community.
support or people who are just like, oh, I like, what are you working on? Like, I want to see it. Like, it's so necessary to like have that, in order to be like, oh my God, yeah,
Absolutely.
I should sit down and create something. Like, I really, yeah,
Yeah.
that's great. Somebody wants to see that. Like,
Totally. So, okay, so there we have 5 poets every year, correct?
yes.
So, for the teen who really wanted it, maybe they were going after it and it doesn't work out, do you have any ideas for how teen poets can kind of just like grow as a poet in general?
Yeah, that's like such a really good question. First and foremost, I will say that I see so many of the semifinalists go on to win portfolios like in when they enter their
I mean,
senior year, and ones who like didn't necessarily get it. It is so completely luck of who is reading,
Yep. I
what
mean, that's
mood they're
publishing in
in,
general too.
what their mood is in the moment. Like it's actually really helped me with my own, like, oh my God, I've been rejected for the 9,000th time. I'm like, it's never like just the merit of the work. It's
Right.
really, you just have to keep putting it out there and because you'll find the person who's like, oh, this resonated. And then it builds from there. Um, and I will say that, like, one of the things that a lot of national student poets say that they deal with too is like imposter syndrome.
Don't we all? Relatable.
Which is what I'm going to say is like everybody does, right?
Yep.
We all do. One of them this year, Anya, suggested, she's like, I'm going to stop thinking of myself as like, I'm not going to stop thinking as an imposter syndrome. I'm going to think of it as infiltrator syndrome. I've infiltrated. And that, like,
I love that.
switched something in my brain. And I'm like, me too. I'm going to start thinking at it like, look at me. I just infiltrated. Like,
That's amazing.
that's a really good way to look at it too, is that, like, like, you can definitely have your own doubts and use those to push you to learn and hone your voice and do more.
Yep.
But also a little bit of being like, actually, I'm so cool that I can infiltrate. Like, let me infiltrate. Let me do this. Let me hack it.
I also kind of think the more imposter syndrome you have, the more it shows that you care, and the more
Yes.
that it shows that you care about growing as an artist, you care about working on your craft. If you don't have that and you're just like, okay, I'm
And
done.
you're like, I am the best in the whole wide world, and you
We don't want that.
Yeah, you're not going to be very fun to talk to, deal with, exist with.
Absolutely. Okay, so for our last question, could you just tell us what is your favorite part about working for the awards?
Oh, what is my favorite part? It's like getting to meet the different young artists and writers for me, like, and getting to work so closely. Like, I feel really lucky because my job means that I get to work very closely with 5 of them, like, for
Yes.
a year period, and then get to continue to watch them grow and change. And I feel like I am challenged to grow and change every time because it's a different group. They come with brand new perspectives, and I'm able to, like, learn so much.
Yeah.
Not just, like, in terms of, like, Gen Z slang, but, like, learn so much from their poetry and from how they process and then create, that it's just so magical and exciting for me. And, like,
Mhm.
like, especially, like, when there are poets who come in and they're like, I've never read my poem before out loud in my life ever. And then they read the poem out loud and you're like, that's the most brilliant thing I've ever heard in my life. And you, like, just are losing your mind. You're like, I just got to be the first person hearing this genius, like, read their poetry out loud. Like,
Oh, that gives me chills. I love that. No, that's so special. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for everything you do for the Alliance and for teen poets in general. Like, you are truly are helping to shape the future poets of America, and you are killing it. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to tell our audience about the program, or do you think we covered it all?
I think we covered it all. I'm just like, just check out the different chapbooks and their work, and then follow some of them, like, who have continued to, like, be writing and publishing. Like, check them out, because it's like, it really changes your perspective on.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're going to link everything in the show notes so everyone can check that out. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm always excited. I'm like, let me talk about my poets.
Yes.
Writers, artists, poets, you already know the drill. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and LinkedIn so you receive all of our updates. Please consider supporting teen artists and writers further by checking out the donate link in our show notes. And if you are a Scholastic Awards alum and you are interested in sharing your story on the podcast, please reach out. We want to hear from you, so email us at social@artandwriting.org. And of course, I can't wrap up today's episode without saying a special congratulations to the national medalists of the 2025 Scholastic Awards. We cannot wait to see you this summer at Carnegie Hall. Let's connect and stay creative. Bye, everyone!